Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to yet another conversation which is always Zara Hatke. And this one is with someone who has his insights deep into the neighborhood. He's an author par excellence, an awesome communicator, but more importantly, he's also a member of the National Security Advisory Board, someone who I have deep admiration for. I love to read his books. 4 on Pakistan already, Tilakji.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
so
your
much
time.
for having me, Anand. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
It's been a long time
Yeah.
that we've been planning this, but finally it's happened, and perhaps around a time when the conversation in the neighborhood is once again ignited. So let's try and understand the Balochistan conundrum, as you've titled your book, one of the 4 that you've written around Pakistan and the neighborhood. Why is the Balochistan problem such a unique one?
You see, for several factors. First of all, Balochistan, as you know, 44% of the land area and strategically positioned. So it is too important a province for Pakistan to loosen its grip. But the policies that it has adopted for the last 70 years has done everything to loosen that grip. So that's one major part of the problem. The second problem is Pakistan was created in 47. The Baloch have been on this land for millennia.
Yeah.
So they have their own culture, own language, own history, own way of dealing with things. What Pakistan has tried to do since 47 is to impose centralization, Islam, common language and centralization. Not give any kind of provincial autonomy to the Baloch or allow them to handle the benefits or get the benefits of their own resources. So the Baloch are saying, we are here much longer than you. You only come in 1947. We've been here for, centuries. So don't push us around. So that conflict is inherent. So I think for these 2 reasons, Balochistan has become a huge dilemma as far as Pakistan is concerned.
But Pakistan was espousing Muslim Brotherhood, etc. So the Baloch are not Muslim.
No, they are Muslim, but they are secular. Religion does not define their identity. See, like in the case of the Bengalis, language defines their identity and not so much religion. Muslims, but language is far more important. Similarly for the Baloch, their culture, their history, the Baloch Mayar, which is the way of the Baloch, far more important than religion. So they are perhaps the most secular people in Pakistan.
No, but this overturns the whole Pakistani narrative of Muslim Brotherhood on its head, no?
Yeah.
Because they have problems with the Pashtuns, Pakhtunistan, you've written about that. They have problems with the Baloch. They are also Muslims. So within their own Pakistan itself, they are fighting with Muslims.
Yeah.
So then why do they go about preaching Muslim Brotherhood to the world and Muslim unity to the world?
So that's it. You see, 1947, when Jinnah sought Pakistan on the basis of religion, he was warned. In fact, Maulana Azad told him that nowhere in the Quran does it say that Islam will form a nation. It doesn't say that. People in the subcontinent have loyalty to their own sects. You can unite them in the name of the sect, you can unite them in the name of anti-Hindu phobia. But you will not be able to unite them in terms of governance. And this is exactly what has happened. All the 4 provinces are pulling in different directions despite being Muslims. There's a 5th insurgency going on in Balochistan at the moment, the far more serious one. The Pashtuns are up in arms, a section of the Pashtuns are up in arms. So it doesn't work. It hasn't worked. Despite the fact, so artificial unity, if you try and create on the basis of Islam. You see, if Islam was such a unifying factor, why are there 52 Islamic countries?
Correct.
Why are there so many countries in the the Arabian Peninsula itself?
Correct.
So it is not a unifying force, and this is where the mistake, the initial original mistake was made.
True, but Imran Khan recently and everybody else, they try and say the Muslim world should come together. Pakistan will always stand up for the cause of Muslims. So it's quite a hypocritical position isn't it? And they should be called out for it. The other thing, Tilakji, is that Pakistan could not have done this on their own. Whether it is the occupation of the province of Kalat in 48, where they invaded in 47 and then 48, the annexation happens, or thereafter. So one big superpower has to be bankrolling this. Between the Americans and the Chinese, one of them have always been involved. Fair or unfair, right or wrong?
No. That time it was the British.
That was the British, huh?
It was the British who sort of eased the path of the Muslim League to become the representative body of all Muslims. There was a strong movement of Muslims in Hyderabad. The British made sure that only the Muslim League got recognition as the representative body of the Muslim. And within the Muslim League also there were different leaders. But they backed Jinnah. And they made sure that he emerged as the leader of the Muslim League. So the British played the role. Then they played a role in ensuring that Jinnah did not grant independence to Kalat. He had signed a document on 4th of August 1947 agreeing to Kalat's independence. But by October, the British said, look, you can't do this. Initially, the British thought that they will keep Kalat independent because that was the Treaty of 1876. That they would continue to deal with Balochistan and they would be able to use Balochistan for their imperial, interests. But then they realized the whole of Pakistan was available to them. So then they told Jinnah, you can't allow this independence. There's now documents available in which the Commonwealth Office wrote to Jinnah and informed the British High Commissioner in Karachi that please prevail upon Jinnah not to allow Kalat's independence and to force the accession of Khan of Kalat. He forced the accession. Similarly, the British also with Gilgit, the same thing, they worked with Major Brown. So it was the British hand up to the 50s that made sure that Pakistan was not only created, but Pakistan became a viable entity.
Please explain to me and to our viewers, what was the strategic intent behind this? There was a geostrategic intent for the British to do this. They could have left Pakistan or this entire Punjabi Sunni population and that region of Punjab which was split. Why did they want to merge Sindh, Balochistan, then Gilgit and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and all of that? What was the strategic intent?
You see, in 1947, the imperial staff, the British imperial staff, they were preparing plans for the post Second World War. And, how would they locate the forces? And they realized that their forces or British objectives could be met by having a deal with Pakistan itself. They didn't need India. So that kept India out of the equation. Then they found that they have to strengthen Pakistan. So they did three things. First, they converted the Durand Line from spheres of influence to an international border. So Afghanistan lost the entire FATA and it came to, they prevailed upon Jinnah not to allow the accessions of Kalat. And they told Major Brown to organize that mutiny once they found that the Maharaja of Kashmir had signed the instrument of accession with India. Now their interest was that after the Second World War they realized that the Soviet Union is a threat.
Right.
Relations deteriorated almost immediately. And they also felt that for the protection of what was called the wells of power, the oil wealth of the Middle East, they needed a base. So they found that Pakistan would be the best base, rather than Balochistan itself. So that was their imperial interest, that they wanted to have a strong Pakistan in which they could use against the Soviet Union. Now, Britain was a totally exhausted power. US took over from Britain.
Correct.
And they set up an airbase in Peshawar.
Peshawar and Shamsi also later on.
For Peshawar, the U-2 flights were shot down. Remember? So it became controversial. So they started using Pakistan. Then Pakistan became member of CENTO and CETO and things like that. So they stepped into the Britain's shoes, which Britain could no longer continue to do. So that was the strategic interest of the Britain and then of the United States.
Where does India come into the picture? Because Pakistan often in times has said that this entire fight or problem in Pakhtunistan with the TTP or with the Baloch, with various factions, is all engineered by the RNAW of Bharat. So let me ask you this.
So, if you look at Pakistan's history from 47, they never accept that anything is their fault. They've always externalized their problems. India karwa raha hai, Israel karwa raha hai, US karwa raha hai. It's somebody else always. They never look within themselves. Why are the Baloch upset? Did India force the accession of the Khan of Kalat? Or was it Pakistan? Did they break promises with succession of leaders, with Baloch leaders, that got the Baloch upset? Has India come and deprived the Baloch of the fruits of their resources? It is they themselves, their policies, which have alienated the Baloch to such an extent that now the fifth rebellion insurgency is going on. Similarly with the Pashtuns. They funded, they supported, they gave targets to the Taliban for 20 years. Right?
Correct.
And once the Taliban got into Kabul, they were rejoicing in Pakistan. Imran Khan said, we broke on the shackles of slavery. Their objective was that the Taliban in power will defang the TTP and hand over the leaders to us. It will throw out India from Afghanistan and it will recognize the Durand Line. That was their security concerns. Within 6 months, they found none of the three are happening. That was not India's fault. Taliban said no question of recognizing the Durand Line because it's an undefined border.
Yeah.
India is back.
It's a matter of great pride for the Pashtuns because they believe that land
that
is...
divides, it divides brothers.
Yeah.
They believe their land is up to Atak.
Atak,
Yeah.
correct.
India's back in Kabul. The Taliban says, please come and reopen your project and set up your embassy. We'll protect you. And they said, we cannot do anything against the TTP because when we needed shelter after 2001, it was the tribesmen of FATA who today are organized as the TTP. Gave them shelter, protection. Today, the TTP requires shelter and protection. So, as per the norms of Pashtunwali, the Taliban has to give them.
That's the cultural tribal brotherhood.
Yeah.
That rises above just the religious faith.
Exactly. So, where does India fit into all this? And the TTP has got a very interesting argument. The TTP says we studied in Pakistani madrasas. We were taught by Pakistani ulema that jihad, you have to do jihad in Afghanistan. We did jihad in Afghanistan. That jihad is over. We now want to do jihad in Pakistan. What's wrong? So Pakistan initially had no argument. Then Pakistan said, no. Jihad can be declared only by a state. So TTP said, fine, we are a state. They converted themselves. They have a central commission. They have ministries. They have got 12 provinces. 7 in KPK, 1 in Gilgit-Baltistan, 2 in Punjab, and 2 in Balochistan.
Which they control.
They have nominated their shadow governors, exactly what Taliban had done in Afghanistan. They said, we are a government now. And we have declared jihad, so tell us what's wrong. Pakistan has no answer to their questions. So ideologically too, and territorially. They say this is our ilaka. Then 2 days ago, the Noor Wali Masood came out with this statement, the 12-minute statement, where he shows how Pakistan is the most un-Islamic state. He said, Pakistan कहता है Islamic Republic. He said, यहाँ पे एक चीज़ भी नहीं है जो Islamic है. He said, there's alcohol available. They do Islamic banking. They are, breaking all kinds of laws. He said, we have the real Sharia. And we will impose the real Sharia on Pakistan and not Pakistan itself. Now, the Pakistan doesn't have any answer to that question. And he has spoken directly to the people of Pakistan.
So he's not addressing the government or the military.
He's addressing the people. He said, your government is mostly totally un-Islamic. So, in all this, where is India?
RNAW ही सबको पैसे भेज रहा है. Fund, thousands of dollars are being sent और सारी training RNAW और Indian फौज कर रही है. That's the Pakistani challenge.
Again, whether it's the Pashtuns or the Baloch, they don't need to be trained to fight. They are born fighters.
Fighters, correct.
They know the terrain. They know their area. Nobody can come and teach them how to fight. They can teach others how to fight.
Nobody and also to survive with those hardships.
Yeah. So that is one. As far as money is concerned, even for example, the Taliban in 1.0, they have different sources of revenue generation. And people have documented this. There are books written on this, where they get their money from. From extortion, overseas, rich Arabs fund them. They've got their own businesses, running their own businesses. Haqqanis, for example, are extremely rich by running their own businesses. Nobody has to come and give them.
They also have opium. There is also that.
That they provide protection for. They are not sort of...
Okay.
I'm not sure about the TTP because not much opium goes on the Pakistani side. That's on the Taliban in the Afghanistan side. And secondly, then how does India push across money anyway? There's no banking channel which the TTP is going to let you remit the money or something like that.
Correct.
So, again, these are all excuses that Pakistan makes. The fact of the matter is that they are not able to deal with neither the TTP nor with the Baloch. So they are looking for excuses, blaming somebody else.
Now let's come to the Fifth Insurgency. It seems to be that they are far more organized. If you look at Darai Bulan, and also with Jafar Express in the last 1 year, plus the suicide Fidain attacks on the Chinese engineers in Karachi, their intent seems to be sharper, training seems to be sharper, and they seem to be far more organized. What's triggered this fifth insurgency, and why is
You see, the
how would
insurgency.
you read it? A cause for worry?
Yeah.
Is this perhaps the indication of balkanization of Pakistan? Your
You
thoughts?
see, this insurgency began, fifth insurgency, 2004. It picked up steam when this lady doctor was raped in Sui. Because, for the Baloch, that's a huge no-no. In 2006, Akbar Bukti was killed in a cave.
Correct.
Assassinated. So it gathered steam. Then the nature of the insurgency has also been evolving. Earlier, it was the Sardars who were fighting for their area. Maris would fight in the Mari territory, Buktis would fight in Bukti territory, Bengals in their own. Over the period of time, the Baloch middle class has come into their own. Engineers, doctors, educated. They did their initial, they cut their teeth in the Baloch Students Organization. And they have realized that gradually their identity is being swamped by Pakistan. And if they don't do something about it today, there will be no Baloch left tomorrow. CPEC is another major cause of worry. Gwadar is another major cause of worry. So when they have come to the fore, and meanwhile the old Sardars of Balochistan have passed on, the children are mostly abroad. They still have a lot of influence and they still provide direction, but the boots on the ground are by middle class Baloch, who are fighting not for Sardari Nizam, but are fighting for a pan-Balochistan democratic country. They have also imbibed the best practices from others, from the Taliban, for example. So therefore, you will find this recent announcement of BRAS and also of this Baloch National Army.
Correct.
That they will coordinate their actions. Instead of small actions, they will do major actions by using the resources and the best practices of other groups. They've also now got access to American weaponry that was left behind in Afghanistan
About
via the
$80
TTP.
billion worth of...
7 billion.
7 billion,
Yeah.
okay.
So TTP got some portion of it as their war booty. Part of it has been passed on to the Baloch, like sniper rifles, thermal imaging, night vision. So that has notched up the lethality of what the Baloch are able to do. Earlier, the Pakistan army had the more sophisticated weapons, and the Baloch was still, the older weapons. Today, they can match the Pakistan army. In fact, they may even have better weaponry than the Pakistan army. So the attacks have become more lethal and more complex. And also better planning. Last August, they attacked simultaneously in 11 districts.
11 districts, yes.
Even this hijacking of the Jafar Express, I've never come across a train being hijacked. The
Yeah.
last time you saw it probably was in Sholay.
Sholay, the Dakus of the Yor.
And then Viru and Jay sort
Yeah.
of prevented it. So, it requires a lot of preparation, timing. They had the intelligence that 200 army people were traveling in this train.
Yeah.
And how do you stop a moving train? So all this shows the sophistication of their attacks. And I think this should be a cause of worry for the Pakistan army. And I think they have also learnt several lessons from the TTP, and the TTP, I'm sure, has also learnt lessons from them.
If you look at it from a geopolitical perspective, if you look at that map very carefully, in today's geopolitics, that region is very critical for the Americans. It's critical for the Chinese. It's critical for Bharat also. Balochistan is there sandwiched between Afghanistan, Iran, and also Pakistan. And then you have the Gulf, and it just opens up. Are you seeing a balkanization of Pakistan or Balochistan separating out? Are nations like China, which have sunk in billions there as per a CPEC for the last 3-4 years, it's not moved on. Nations like America, which have given up on Pakistan, looking the other way and look at other options, but they still want an eye on Afghanistan and a hold there. Do you see these global hegemonistic powers, or however it is, somewhere aligning, saying a free Balochistan is a better option than it under Pakistan? Is there a shift? Could there be a shift in the thought process per se, compared to how the British thought about it and how the current day geopolitics thinks about
See,
it?
I think the US at the moment, something may change tomorrow, it's different. But at the moment, I think the US is too involved geopolitically elsewhere to be able to really looking at Balochistan. The side, in 1962, Henry Kissinger visited Pakistan for the first time. That time he was a Harvard professor. And there was an insurgency going on in Balochistan. So somebody asked him, what do you think of the Baloch insurgency? He said, I won't recognize the Baloch insurgency even if it hit me in the face. The American, similarly now, the interest in Pakistan itself has lessened enormously as far as the US is concerned. Maybe a little bit of counterterrorism and the nuclear issue. But otherwise, as what was earlier, is no longer there. So I don't think that the US is going to be looking at Balochistan too closely. The Chinese, yes. The Chinese have sunk in money, as you said.
Right.
But they also realize that Pakistan is either unwilling or incapable of protecting their personnel and their assets on the ground, The Pakistan says it has 2 security divisions. Yet the Chinese keep getting attacked now and then. So, and especially this hijacking of the Jafar Express is going to be a wake-up call for the Chinese. Because they'll say, okay, you can hijack a train. Tomorrow you could probably, what happens to the Gwadar airport? What happens to the Gwadar port itself?
Correct.
Or some of our power plants. And Chinese think long term.
Yeah.
So they'll also be thinking that, kahan hum aake phas gaye hain?
Correct.
That's why CPEC has peaked, it's plateaued. I think the Chinese realize that no point spending more good money after bad money because we're not going to get any of this back. So geopolitically, but also I think that the Pakistan army has not been weakened to such an extent that Balochistan will splinter right now. The Baloch are not going to give up. They have fought for 20 years, they're going to continue fighting. They've been fighting since 48, whenever they have the strength. Today they're far more powerful than what they were earlier. They are not going to relent either. So I see some sort of a big, long war of attrition. And Baloch, because there's a question of their identity and their homeland, even if they're crushed in this 5th insurgency, there'll be a 6th, there'll be a 7th. They're not going to give up. Pakistan army, how long can they last? That is the question. Because you have a major problem among the Pashtuns.
Correct.
You have, maybe there's a problem in the Sindh tomorrow. So you can militarily defeat the Baloch, but there's no conventional war. So how do you defeat them?
Correct.
But you can't outlast a people who have decided they want independence. Certainly not militarily. So the Pakistan army will have to either talk to the Baloch, compromise not by giving them more roads, more resources and all, by talking to them on basic political issues. What is their grievance? What is it that they want? They want Pakistan should quit. Is there a way to retrieve the situation? What Pakistan is doing is ensuring that the situation cannot be retrieved.
But why is Bharat keeping an arm's distance from the Baloch? The time and again, the Baloch have reached out to Bharat, and even under the last decade, under PM Modi also, they've said, why don't you recognize Balochistan as an international problem? Why doesn't India put forth our story to the UN? Why don't you back us openly? It's a question that's been asked. Or are we a little dodgy? Because Pakistan always goes back to Sharm el-Sheikh and goes back to Dr. Manmohan Singh's comment on Balochistan saying, see, we told you India is involved. But why aren't we taking a position? Because one of the biggest human rights travesties is in Balochistan. And that goes unnoticed by the world because it's on their blind spot.
See, I can't speak for the government of India, retired long time ago. But I think you don't have a locus standi in Balochistan. You don't have to share a border. There's no boundary. There is no... In the case of Bangladesh, you have 10 million refugees. You automatically got sucked into that conflict. You don't have that. So I think it's very... since we follow the international system scrupulously, it's very difficult for government of India to get up and start saying it. And everybody will say, what is your locus standi? How come you are raising it? So I think it's that's why it's difficult. But I think people in India are watching the situation very closely, what is happening to Balochistan. And who knows, things may change in the future. But I think right now that is the...
Why has the UN turned its back on the Baloch? Because the UN picks up cause at the drop of a hat. They were mourning what's happening in Palestine and Gaza, but how is it that the Baloch don't matter?
It's a question of national interest. Somebody has to take charge. The US has to say, not wink, wink. There has to be somebody who takes ownership of it in the UN.
That's why I kept asking you this, that for the Chinese and the Americans, as they look at that map, An independent democratic Balochistan, does it not serve their strategic purpose more than it being a part of Pakistan today?
They probably, to the extent that somebody is thinking about Balochistan in the US,
See, because he's looking for rare earth minerals. He needs rare earth minerals. Balochistan has rare earth minerals. He wants a place.
He's too preoccupied with other issues.
I'm just saying he wants a place where he has an eye on the Middle East, and he also has somewhere a toehold on Afghanistan. Plus, he can have a look at train his guns on China. Balochistan not so far from China. For the Chinese, they know that if they are able to work out a deal, then Balochistan all the way back into Gilgit and via the corridor, they can find a way from Afghanistan into this one on the top. It's a long, at least their CPEC finds some fruition because it's stuck.
But I think if Pakistan weakens more, if it implodes, for example, by the Pashtuns or the Sindh or something else, then what you are saying becomes an option on the table. Right now, it's not on the table. Right now, it is Pakistan itself. People rather deal with a ostensibly strong Pakistan rather than a splintered Pakistan, where Balochistan becomes important on its own. Then the Baloch also have to demonstrate unity and common leadership. Today, the Baloch are also divided amongst various groups.
Correct.
So once they show that they are united, they have a common leadership, they have a common program, this is what the shape of Balochistan will be, an independent Balochistan. Today, nobody knows. What will the Balochistan of the future look like? So the Baloch have a lot of homework to do also. So I think all this is in flux. And both on the Pakistan side and on the Balochistan side, it'll have to see how it works itself out. And if the Baloch, as there are some indications that they are getting their act together, at least militarily, they decided to have coordinated action. Maybe politically also. Some leader will emerge who can unify, because the tribal influence continues to be strong. And there's also a lot of tribal rivalry and tribal jealousies.
Correct. Yeah.
So, you have to overcome all that. And the process has been set. But I think the evolution may take longer.
Because somewhere, if the Baloch organize themselves, the Pakhtuns will. Then the Sindhis will too. There is a possibility if Pakistan continues in the same vein that it is, which is like a self-destruct mode, there will be eventual balkanization that will happen. But do you see that happening in the next decade or so? Or it all depends on how the Pakistan leadership shapes itself, or the Sunni Punjabis reorganize?
You see, how Pakistan deals with these two critical issues, ethnic issues of the Pashtuns and of the Baloch, will determine the shape of Pakistan in the next decade. If they don't deal with it imaginatively. You see, take the case of the Pashtuns. You have the Taliban,
Right.
which are totally in control of Afghanistan. They haven't accepted the Durand Line. Up to Atak is ours. The TTP on the Pakistani side, they don't accept the Durand Line either. So there is a pull and push, there is a pincer movement from both sides of the Durand Line.
Correct.
Right? On not accepting the Durand Line. Then you have the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, which is the civil rights.
Yeah.
Then you have the PTI government, so it's a pretty complex situation there. Does the Pakistan leadership, civil and military, have the subtlety, have the vision, have the understanding to be able to deal with this complexity? Or, as the saying goes, if all that you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and all that the Pakistan army does is try and bash these people down, it won't work. So a lot is going to depend on Pakistan's policies towards these ethnic groups and their resentment, their dissatisfaction openly. How does the Pakistan army deal with it? Right now, there are no signs that they have an understanding and the subtlety of analysis which needs to be able to deal with this.
An interesting take was over in the next decade, if the balkanization of Pakistan happens, then PoK will come back to Bharat.
You want to wait a decade?
That's a nice one.
No, jokes apart. You see, because things are in such a flux, especially in the case of Pakistan, sorry, it's difficult to predict.
Right.
There is resentment in PoK and in Gilgit Pakistan about the kind of lack of lack of development in their areas when they compare themselves with J&K. especially after 2019.
Correct. And there are a lot of people I've been given to understand slowly coming back here also.
Yeah.
Finding their way back saying, no, we want to...
They're looking for hospitals, they're looking for education opportunities for their children, looking for jobs. They find they have nothing in PoK and Gilgit-Baltistan, whereas in J&K is booming, the bridges that are being built, the train is coming to Srinagar.
Yeah.
So these are huge landmarks, infrastructure development. So there is resentment there too. So more than India wanting to go and grab PoK, Gilgit-Baltistan, you'll find people from there are dissatisfied that they may want to,
Come over. Huh?
yeah. And because, the Gilgit-Baltistan, for example, the status is totally undefined. It doesn't form part of Pakistan's constitution.
Correct.
Not part of the territories. It is not represented in the National Assembly. The status is opaque.
But we've also not been very... we've just paid largely lip service, right? We've left 24 seats empty in the J&K Assembly, erstwhile Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh Assembly. This time around, again, it's a similar lip service. We are not making active representations for the Gilgit-Balti communities and also their representation here. So where is our because we see politicians often coming out and saying, Abhi bas PoK baki hai. The FM also the other day said the only unresolved issue is PoK. So somebody said if you don't want to lift a gun and you don't want to start another war, then the only way is that there is a balkanization of Pakistan that happens, and then, there are separate states, nations happen, and one nation, one part, which is integrally sovereign part of sovereign Bharatiya territory, comes back to us. Yeah. So that's why I asked you this. And you're saying that at that time there won't be resistance there because they will be more than willing to join.
Yeah. So I think it's incremental. I think India is watching the situation and don't want to precipitate matters. You see, because you create an issue, suddenly you'll find Pakistan people uniting behind the army. Today, the army has never been so weak.
Correct.
Not militarily, in terms of support of the people. Sorry.
So we neither interfere nor intervene. So we just watch. Let's let it play out as it is playing out.
If it is imploding,
yeah,
sit back and watch the fun.
Sit back and watch the fun. But with respect to the human rights, final question with the Baloch, and I think one of the sadder parts of that is the number of missing personnel, number of women who've been maltreated, these helicopter firings which have been perpetrated on them. Is there no way that this can be brought to the world beyond just the media stories, or because every time Pakistan raises Jammu and Kashmir, so-called human rights violation by Bharat and all of that, do you believe that we counter them equally, or the world?
I think it's being the world has taken
in the
notice.
mirror.
That's why something in the air. Mehrang Baloch has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes.
So obviously the international community has taken notice. The Human Rights Council, the Baloch are there every time, 3 times a year, explaining the problems. Debates have been held, on the sidelines of the British Parliament. Germany, there have been a lot of protests. So, again...
Slowly, incremental build-up is happening.
Yeah.
So it will happen over a period. So what's your next book about?
My publisher would not be too happy if I told you.
But it's going to be on Pakistan again?
It'll be about that region, about that area.
About that region, about that area.
Yeah.
All right. So look forward to that conversation very, very soon. Always fun speaking with you, sir. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Anand. Always a pleasure speaking to you, and really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.